Thank you. As introduced, I'm Emanuel. I'm the proud owner of an Esto scale, so I think that's probably why I'm here. I'm also here to tell you and to encourage you to talk to Mikael. It's not always that you see someone who is experienced as an entrepreneur, who is halfway into the process of doing his own startup and is motivated and eager to get to the next level and wants to have co-founders. So just talk to him after the meeting. I'm sure it will be interesting. Who in the room has heard of Prio? So these many Portuguese. Okay, very interesting. It's actually a good ratio because Prio is not very strong in Lisbon. We are getting strong as a company, as an energy company throughout the country, but we started in Aveiro and we are very strong in the center, in the north, but getting stronger in Lisbon, and so many people in Lisbon still don't know us. But we are a company that is only 10 years old. We are an energy company, not an electricity company. We are an energy company, meaning that we do electricity, but we also do other things. And our core business is actually oil and fuels. Okay? We have that strange positioning, energy is top, low cost. So top energy is low cost, meaning that we have very good products like all the other incumbents, the guys that have been here for many, many years. But we have a model, a business model that is basically simplified and allows us to work always with lower prices than our main competitors, okay? By being only 10 years old and having started in Aveiro, we are actually getting very close to 1 billion euros in revenue, which is actually very rare in Portugal, unfortunately, but we are very proud of what we have achieved. I will lead you through some numbers very, very fast because I don't want to bother you with this. I want to talk a bit more about some of my views for the energy sector, okay? So we started in 2007. We distribute energy. We are 100% Portuguese today. We have many certifications and we basically work in 7 core business areas. As you see, I'm very fast. So I have 30 slides and 15 minutes, so you'll see that I'm very fast. Basically, we have a biodiesel plant, we have gas filling bottles, you saw them with Mikael. We have service stations, we are at 250 service stations in Portugal. And direct sales, we have Prio Supply, which is basically the only, one of the only 2 players in Portugal that imports and import fuels and do complex trading operations in the market. We have plenty of investments in electric mobility. And we have lubricants also and some few other business areas. In numbers, 249 stations was in January, so we are over 250 as I told you. 509 employees was in January, where we are above 700 today. We're growing at 18% per year still. We have more than 2 million customers per month in our stations already. We are above 10% in market share in fuel. We have more than 1,500 sales points of gas. We were actually the first player to enter the gas market with a greenfield operation in 50 years in Portugal. And we had 129 electric vehicle charging points. We are today above 150 electric charging points. We were pioneers in working in electricity for mobility, and we still are today the largest private network, or own the largest private network of electric charging points. And we are the #3 EU producer of biodiesel out of used cooking oils, meaning that we recover used cooking oils from all the kitchens throughout the country and throughout Europe. We transform it into biodiesel in our plant in Aveiro, and out of there we export to the UK, to Germany, to the Netherlands, Spain, France, and we sell to all the operators in Portugal, all but one actually. Guys who don't like us. Don't worry, don't bother, okay? So, Prio being introduced, I want to talk a bit about this future of sustainable energy solutions. These are basically personal views. I will talk a bit more about some of the non-electricity sides of energy, and I will obviously be very happy to answer any questions. So, first thing on the electric cars. I'm an enthusiast of electric cars. But I am also someone who likes to feel his feet on the ground, okay? And I feel that the world doesn't feel his feet on the ground today in some areas, and maybe in this one it's the case. So it's the promise, but it demands more in Portugal and throughout the world, and I think there is excess fuzz, and that has never resulted in good things. In Portugal, that excess fuzz actually started 10 years back, so that's one of the reasons why we started very early in electric cars with MOBI and with incentives to electric cars. And you will see, I will present some other cases that should have allowed us to learn from mistakes that we had done, that we as a country and many other countries have done, in over-investing in some unproved technologies way too early, as Pedro said in the beginning. So sometimes I see some signals of that in this sector. There is a big mess also between all the electric car solutions, and everyone is saying that I want to move out of diesel and gasoline, I want to move into electric, and the cities will stop having fuel cars and so on. Basically, there is a huge mess behind those words, because everyone is confusing mild hybrids with heavier hybrids and electric cars. And basically, normally people are just saying that the future is mild hybrids, which is quite obvious. The car today doesn't consume as much as it consumed 10 years ago. And so some of the promises are just overstated and over-amplified by the media, and sometimes they don't have the substance behind, okay? If we want electric cars to be a success, we need to have a proper market. And we need to have sustainability in three main elements. First, in electricity itself, it needs to be sustainable, or at least the most sustainable possible. That's something that we've been working on as a society, as countries, thoroughly over the last few years, and with very good results. So that's something that is in the process. On taxation, it's something that entrepreneurs don't think about, and it's something that companies don't normally think about, but it will eventually be a huge problem. Portugal, as many countries throughout the world, is very dependent on taxation in fuels. If fuel starts to reduce as consumption, then we will have a problem of taxation, and that taxation will eventually become imposto automóvel, so taxes on cars, because you cannot tax differently, or it's very hard for you to tax differently electricity for mobility than you tax electricity for non-mobility uses, okay? So probably it will become imposto automóvel. In a country like Portugal, where imposto automóvel is already by far one of the largest in Europe, if you want to multiply it by 10, then you will have a problem, because people won't like to buy their Clios at 200,000 euros. So there is a problem there. And raw materials. That's something that people start to talk about. The media doesn't talk about, but it's a real issue, and it's a real problem when you want to scale up electric car solutions, and it's something that needs to be worked on. Finally, electric cars need to sustain momentum after the bad news. We are on a very good news hype. Bad news will start to come in. People will start to be aware of some of the problems. It needs to sustain the momentum apart from that. And I think the adoption curve will be something like this, like it's basically normal, except for Bitcoin. All the industries go through that, okay? While everyone is talking about electric cars, and Prio is moving ahead in electric cars, and we still believe that electric cars are the future, there is plenty happening and going on in energy that is not electricity, okay? So in mobility again, natural gas is great for large fleets, and it's starting to be adopted in large fleets. It's maybe short-lived just because it is a new solution that comes in when newer solutions and more sustained solutions can come in. So maybe there won't be natural gas car solutions for 30 or 40 years, but we'll see. LPG is actually a surprise. And Michael told you about LPG for domestic consumption. For car uses, LPG is actually considered since last year by the European Union as one of the alternative fuels that needs to be encouraged significantly. Why is that? Just because LPG, although it's a derivative of oil, it's a derivative of oil that is not fully used throughout the world, meaning that there is a lot of waste. There is a lot of LPG that is just burnt instead of used in mobility. And so if the rate of use of LPG increases, we are all better off as a world. Bioenergy. 10 years ago when Prio started, and Pedro actually told me at the start that he was involved in it, so it's very interesting to exchange some ideas in relation to that world. biodiesel was basically the future. So the electric cars were just too far ahead, like probably hydrogen is today, and biodiesel was just the future. Everyone was so happy to see a solution in which you could produce energy for mobility without resorting to Saudi Arabia or to Russia. And on top, it was cheaper. But then some problems started to come. And so the bad news, see here, the bad news started to come in, and biodiesel didn't sustain its momentum fully. But biodiesel is still here. Throughout Europe, the target is 10% incorporation of biofuels into fuels by 2020, which is very close. Portugal is today at 7.5%. And so all your fuels have 7.5% of biofuel. And it will continue to grow, and that's very important as an area of development in biodiesel, in bioethanol, and in alternative fuels. And it's something that is huge, huge business and requires huge new changes, and startups and new technologies can bring head changes to these markets, and it's billions, okay? A curiosity, you know that biodiesel, although it doesn't have the perfect reputation, is actually sustainable in many manners. We have tested throughout these 10 years biodiesel in all mixtures with all kinds of fleets, and we have concluded that if you mix biodiesel at 15% into diesel, you get 2% reductions in consumption. So not only you are avoiding the use of oil, you are developing an endogenous energy source for the countries that normally consume it, and you are developing a local industry, and on top you get fuel reduction. Imagine that we go from 10% to 15% throughout Europe, you get 2% reductions in fuel consumption. That is basically 3 times as much as electric cars have achieved today, if you don't consider the effects in consumption that electric cars have. So it's still interesting. And there is plenty of job to be done in sustainable fuels. We are very proud to be at the forefront of used cooking oils, as we told you, but there is grape marks and many other sources of energy that are still misused and could be used as alternatives to fuel. Okay? And then there are plenty of other solutions that are still at an R&D stage. Sorry. Mobility is to be tremendously impacted not only by electric cars and by some of these things, it's also to be tremendously impacted by the more and more efficient use of resources throughout the cities, by all the solutions that allow to improve the use of the circulating asset base, meaning all the cars in the city. And given that I don't like huge international companies, I publicize some Portuguese companies. Chauffeur is a very young startup that is a competitor of Uber in Lisbon and Porto. Share a car competes against Hertz in single-day rentals. Basically, you can put your car onto the platform and rent it to someone else. E-Culture, everyone knows, but no one or very few people know that it is based on technology built in Portugal in Matosinhos at Ceia. And Gira, the bikes that I hope many of you already use in Lisbon, are some of the solutions that impact fuel consumption. And then a huge revolution will come with autonomous cars. Autonomous cars don't have, apart from the technology, the small elements in technology that are still required to get to a fully autonomous car, there is no real industrialization barrier to autonomous cars. So I'm a strong believer that autonomous cars will by far outpace electric cars and will be a tremendous change for the world. Then we can talk about other uses of energy, natural gas, and I think in this I will be just seconding some of the comments of Pedro. I think natural gas is reaching its peak use. It's sometimes already abused as an energy source for heat in some more peripheral cities. LPG, I skipped some things. LPG will be here likely forever. As Michael told you, there is still plenty of optimization opportunities to be worked on in this front. And it's huge business throughout the energy sector. We're always talking about huge business. We're talking about more than 500 million euros of revenue only in Portugal, which is a very small market, and only in LPG, and plenty of other things that I could talk about, but I'm not allowed. Very fast, only 1 minute, some few other thoughts. First thing, seconding Pedro. For a country, moving too soon is a waste of taxpayers' money. And I think we've seen that with wind power in Portugal, with solar power. In 2007, I was doing my master's thesis, and I did my master's thesis on how Portugal was betting on solar. And I think it was despairing. It was very frustrating to analyze a bit of what we were doing. We were just wasting and wasting money without, I don't think there were more than 10 jobs created in the industry. And it's sad. In case one moves soon, the focus is first installations, get industry and know-how. It's as simple as that. You don't want to get megawatts that are produced at 5 times the price of normal megawatts. If you do that, you need to get industry and jobs and know-how. You don't want to have media and votes, and I think that's exactly what we did, and it may be what we will do some few other times again. Third thing, in the meantime, don't forget that everything that is not electricity is still huge business, okay? And then demonized, as I say, energy sources will continue to be here for a while, and they still constitute big business, big hirers of talents in all the forms of hiring, being direct hires or hires through startups or so on, and imported sources of development. And we need these markets to be dynamic and competitive. In any case, the future of energy will come, and it will be more sustainable, so just get ready today, or you will lose tomorrow. And in the meantime, just come to Prio. Only in Lisbon, as I told you, we're still small, but we are already above 30 stations, so you will see us throughout. And you can see us closer at web.prioenergy.com. Thank you.